Hello, all right. Hi everyone, thanks for staying after that super exciting presentation. I don't know if I can bring that much energy, but I'll do my best. So can we kick off my slides? That'd be awesome. So I'm glad you guys are all staying here for the money stage. There you go. All right, so what I'm gonna talk about, I timed myself this morning and I think this is roughly gonna be about 18 minutes, and hopefully there'll be a little bit of time left over for questions. But my talk is going to be about the future of work, right? Work is money, and sort of based on some of the things I've learned over the last 17 years in Silicon Valley. So first of all, this is like my douchebag sort of credibility slide of who am I standing on stage. So my name is Marvin. I'm a partner at 500 Startups. If you've never heard of us, 500 Startups is an early stage accelerator and seed fund. We've been around 6 years now. We've invested in over 1,700 companies worldwide. I actually run the San Francisco office, and so in the last 3 years at 500 Startups, I've invested in over 250 companies. So hopefully, I've learned a little bit about how to invest. That's still to be determined. Prior to this, I spent 10 and a half years at Yahoo as an executive. And before that, I was actually at an e-commerce company that raised about $30 million. And I did some corporate jobs before. So I've kind of worked at all different levels of sort of in sort of my various sort of careers. And so hopefully, there's a bunch of things I've learned over the last 17 years that hopefully will be relevant and helpful for you. And so first of all, one of the things I've noticed, and this is going to be more of I'm going to keep it very, very sort of strategic and then move down towards sort of more actionable things at the end. And so one of the things I've noticed, and I think you've seen the data points, you look at the average lifespan of most companies, particularly S&P, it's declined dramatically. It's gone down from 60 years now to less than 20 years. And so you've seen this over and over again, really, really well-known companies dying and disappearing very, very quickly. And why is this happening? Sorry, just looking. Why is this happening? Because you've seen the world is speeding up, right? You're seeing a lot of changes, big changes all happening across the world. And what's happening is a lot of these big companies cannot keep up, right? And in my opinion, whether it's big companies, big government, big is actually dumb and slow. So in the beginning, when you're small, you're very, very market focused and you're very, very sort of customer centric. You can move very, very quickly. You learn very, very quickly. The problem is you get larger and larger and larger and you get more entrenched. You have sort of your mindset gets stuck. You actually become slower. You take a lot longer to make decisions. Very, very hard to take data inputs or you don't process them very, very quickly. And that's actually changing. What's happening is on top of that, you're actually seeing a lot of the cost of startups is actually declining. So just, what I'll mention to you, when my first startup raised about $30 million, we had to raise $5 million just to build a product. And now you're seeing things like, for example, like Amazon Web Services. You're seeing ad platforms like Facebook and Google that can reach many, many people. You're seeing the costs actually decline dramatically. More than 100x have actually declined. So starting a startup now is cheaper than it actually has been in a very, very long time. And what's happening is you're seeing the rise of these startups. The way I think about it is that big companies are like elephants and they're being eaten by ants. And so there's huge, huge opportunities now for startup companies because you only need to get a little piece of these companies, right? And the problem is these big companies, they can't move and they don't adjust very, very quickly. And so for a startup, if you're making $1 million a year, that's probably pretty good. For a big company, the market's so small, or emerging markets are so small, they don't pay attention. And over time, as they stop paying attention, you saw this with BlackBerry, right? You saw this with Nokia. They got basically eaten by Apple, right? And you see this over and over and over again. These startup companies coming up, and maybe Apple's not a great example of a startup, but you're seeing these companies emerge from nowhere to take out these big incumbent players. All right? And so there's this great quote. It's the days of companies with names like General Electric and General Mills and General Motors are over. The money on the table is like krill, right? 1 billion little entrepreneurial opportunities. And so this is, all these changes are opening opportunities for people like me, all of yourselves as well too. And because of this, these companies, these big companies now are under major threat, right? Think about 20, 30 years ago, if you worked at a big company, you had it made, right? Things were awesome. But there's been huge changes. If you look at, I recommend these books, Fourth Economy, The End of Jobs. What's happening now is because these companies are coming under threat, jobs are disappearing. And because of their coming under threat, there's two major things that are actually driving this. Number one, AI and automation, right? Because it's expensive now to actually do stuff. Better to go and get like software to actually do things that people can actually do. On top of that, you have like India and China. If you can't do it with software, outsource it. And so what's happening now, you're seeing these middle class sort of jobs, this one here, you're seeing these middle class jobs be crushed between these two forces. And that's why you see these like layoffs, right? Intel just laid off like 12,000 people, I think earlier this year. You're seeing these big companies that hired like hundreds of thousands of people. They're laying off mass amounts of people. And so these jobs that used to exist, these white collar jobs that used to be secure, right, are disappearing. I think, for example, like there's this great example like truckers. You know, there's something like 3 million people in the United States alone that actually have trucking jobs. And now there's a company called Auto. There was like there's software company that was recently bought by Uber. What has happened is that they actually did their first test. A beer company, Budweiser, actually did the first truck that drove across the US with software without an actual driver. And so these 3 million jobs, for example, are going to completely disappear. And there's more of them, right? Think about like investment bankers. A lot of banks now are all shrinking because you can outsource that, or you're going to get software that's actually going to invest just as well. And so opens up huge opportunities, right? My man Jay-Z said this, you know, I'm not a businessman, I'm a business, man. It actually forces a major change in your thinking now if you want to survive in the future of becoming much more entrepreneurial. You have to become much more entrepreneurial if you actually want to survive, right? Because who the hell wants to be dependent on these big, slow, dumb companies that's just going to fire you the next day when you're not useful for them anymore? And so what's happening, why this is a great time to be an entrepreneur now, I mentioned to you these rise of platforms and global distribution, right? Facebook reaches over 1.6 billion people. Twitter dying, unfortunately, but probably reaches 400 million people. LinkedIn, several hundred million. YouTube, at least 1 billion. You have Apple App Store reaches, I think, probably close to at least several hundred million people at least, right? And so because of this, now you can start a company and distribute it worldwide from wherever you are. That's super powerful. That didn't exist 10 years ago. Why else I'm bullish? Niches, right? So there's this, Kevin Kelly wrote this blog post, and it's called 1,000 True Fans. And I firmly believe if you're starting a business, you want to start with a very, very small niche. Because, you know, in the old days where you couldn't reach a lot of people, a niche, you could reach maybe 10, 20 people. Because you can reach billions of people now with all these channels, niches can be huge. You can reach millions of people that happen to like, I don't know, Barbie dolls. You know, 1960s Barbie dolls if you're selling them. There's all these amazing channels, and because of the wide distribution, niches can reach a lot of people now. And so if you're going to start a business, you want to start a business in a very, very specific niche. The other part that's also amazing now is knowledge is everywhere. In full disclosure, Udemy is a portfolio company of ours, and edX. Like, I actually think now if you want to learn about online marketing, there's classes on it. If you want to learn about web scraping, you want to learn about biotech. I'm taking, for example, an edX biotech class from MIT for free, right, online. There's no excuse now that you can't pick up something that is going to be useful in the market, and you should be developing yourself. The other thing that's also really cool, have you heard of this thing called Tech Shop? So Tech Shop, there's this thing called Makers Movements, right? There's so many tools that are available now. You can actually go and like make your own furniture. You can actually create like your own like software boards. Like hardware boards. Like there's all these really, really cool things. So Tech Shop, for example, I think there's like 4 of them in the San Francisco Bay Area. You can go to these like workshops and all these like 3D printing sort of devices. You can actually go and make your own things. This is what is super exciting now, that even if you are a maker yourself, you can actually create interesting businesses. One of the trends I've actually noticed, I'm a big fan, anyone who's been friends with me for a long time know that I'm actually a huge fan of like this digital nomad movement. So what's a digital nomad movement? It's people who are like online marketing, people who run e-commerce businesses, and they basically make their money in like euros and US dollars. They serve developed country sort of customers, but they live in, because they can run their business from everywhere now with technology like Skype, Slack. You have all these like cloud services. You literally can run your business from anywhere. So I have a friend of mine, he's doing about $4,000 a month in business, and he lives in Thailand, and he's probably spending $1,000 a month. and he's living like a king. And so this term called geo arbitrage, right? Serve developed country customers, but live in a quote unquote developing country that's inexpensive and live a great lifestyle and still save a lot of money. This is going to be a future trend, and this is growing. I went to a digital nomad conference in Berlin last year in August. There were over 800 people there that were all digital nomads. Expect this trend to be growing, and you're going to see a lot more of this. And I think the great thing too, I mentioned you, so many books, so many data, so much data and information out there. Everyone must have heard of Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. There's another great book called Work the System. Now, there's just lots of these books, but there are clear roadmaps now to how to build these businesses. And so in my opinion, there's literally no excuse or reason that you can't actually do this yourself now. I reread, like, you know, I'm a VC, I have a job, love my job, but like I still read the 4-Hour Work Week like every year, because there are just so many insights in there on like how to think about business and how to think about scaling. And so, you know, a couple of things, sort of the key lessons in sort of everything I've mentioned is just number one, you know, learning is actually earning, right? I think to survive in this day and age, I've learned there's really 6 things, in my opinion. There's probably more, but there's 6 things I think most critical. Learning is earning, right? The more you learn in a world where things are changing very, very quickly, you have to stay relevant. And so, especially with all the resources, all the great books, all these online classes out there, you have to be keeping up. This is the only way you can be competitive. Number 2, network, right? Your network is your net worth, because your job opportunities, business opportunities, all these things lead to, you know, or come from people that you know or people that you're going to meet. It's absolutely critical. Third part, niche to win, right? You never want to start a business that serves everybody. Maybe in the long run that might happen, but you want to start a business that serves few specific people in the beginning. Very, 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 very categorically. The other part, side projects. Even if you have a job, you should always be doing side projects, or what we call side hustles. Almost everybody in Silicon Valley I know, even people that work on my team, they do talks, they do paid talks, they consult, they invest on the side. Everybody does side hustles and side projects. Why is this important? This is important because you want to diversify your income streams, right? The second part is you want to diversify and develop new skill sets, because all these skill sets are really relevant for your survival. There's nothing worse, right? Like everyone talks about like, oh, you know, like doing a startup, being an entrepreneur is risky. Bullshit, it is not risky, because when you actually have multiple customers, multiple revenue sources, that you're more diversified than someone who has a job where you have one income stream. So it's absolutely critical to think about yourself as a business, as a portfolio. And so these side projects lead to building a portfolio of skills and incomes. And last of all, which is the most important, in a world where there's literally 6 billion people on the planet, how do you differentiate? It's way more important to be notable versus being credible, right? Most people are credible. You go to good schools, you probably have worked at good companies and done good things before, but it's actually important to differentiate and stand out against the crowd. That's the only way that you can actually win. And so last of all, you know, to sort of close off my talk, it's, you know, quoting Eleanor Roosevelt, you know, the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And I firmly believe this is that now we're actually entering a time where all these things, trends are actually coming together to enable all of you to actually build something or actually work in something that fulfills your own sort of passions and interests. I actually think like and it's easy for me, it's really difficult now, and I feel bad for people where they work at jobs or they work in things where they dread Sunday nights, right? Sad. I actually think we're entering a world where you can actually build businesses, serving businesses that are interesting to yourself personally, that fulfill your own passions, because you have no excuse. Everything's coming together to enable this to happen for you. So hopefully you found this talk somewhat interesting, somewhat inspiring, but I'll be around today and tomorrow if you have any questions. But I hope you actually go and fulfill your dreams and build something that is actually unique and relevant for yourself. All right, thank you.